Welcome. This session is going to be about NYU and is designed for applicants who already operate at high level. These are not exclusive, but these are individuals who are consultants, entrepreneurs, people working in tech, finance leaders, non-traditional applicant, essentially anyone who has strong track record, but knows that admission success is not guaranteed. NYU Stern sits at a unique intersection. It attracts extraordinary talent because of its location and reputation, but also filters aggressively for candidates who bring both the intellectual rigor and emotional intelligence that is a cornerstone of NYU. The problem for many top-tier candidates is that they focus only on credentials. So my test scores, my resume, the prestigious firms I've worked at. And that's good, but it's not the thing that wins a Stern admission. What wins is the ability to connect intellect with self-awareness, analytical strength with adaptability, and ambition with cultural fit. That's what we're going to talk about in our discussion today, how Stern actually evaluates applicants and how you can structure your candidacy for success as well. We're going to have some cases that we're going to be discussing, so definitely stay tuned. Excellent. So let's ground this in numbers. NYU Stern admit rate in 2024 was 25.1%. Compare that to Booth at 28.7 and Kellogg at 28.6. That means statistically Stern is harder to get into than some M7 programs. But what I hear often is essentially that's, these numbers are indicative of where people consider Stern as a safety school. With these numbers, you can see that it shouldn't be considered as such. Its selectivity is driven by the density of high-achieving candidates that NYU or New York City really orbits and what they're looking for. So the application pool is flooded with consultants, bankers, technology professionals, creatives, and these are all quite impressive candidates. That creates two challenges. First, differentiation becomes much more harder. And second, the flexibility of Stern's application format, pick 6, goals essay, optional essay, exposes weak or incoherent narratives. When the AdCom has this much talent to choose from, they're, of course, looking for candidates who signals not just IQ and intellectual capabilities, but also emotional maturity, adaptability, and self-awareness that makes someone thrive at or in the Stern culture. Stern makes its philosophy explicit. IQ plus EQ, that's what they want. But what does that really mean in practice for applicants like you who are putting together strong applications for this school? On the IQ side, the AdCom wants to see you can handle the rigor of the curriculum at NYU. Your analytic abilities, your problem-solving skills, the evidence of intellectual horsepower. But IQ alone doesn't differentiate a candidate or doesn't differentiate someone as the one who's going to get in. Thousands of applicants bring those numbers into the picture, into their application. So that's where EQ comes in as an added filter. They are evaluating, do you work well in teams? Do you have the self-awareness to reflect, to adapt, and to grow? Do you bring liability, maturity, and the ability to elevate others into a community setting that you belong in? Again, this is evidence from your past experiences in terms of what you bring to the table. Now, your goals, as another area that they're looking at, must reflect both clarity and flexibility. For example, it's not enough to say, I want to work in finance in New York, if you want to work in finance in New York. That is obvious, and a lot of people who are applying to NYU that want to work in finance also want to work in finance in New York. What Stern wants is a trajectory that is specific, credible, and also flexible enough to evolve with opportunities that will become available once you're there. I always tell candidates that I work with specifically that you don't know what you haven't been exposed to. So you need the clarity of goals with a directionality that's attainable, but also the flexibility to experience what you don't know that you could experience before joining an MBA program. And finally, culture fit. Stern sits in the heart of Manhattan. They expect students to not just consume the benefits of the city, but also contribute to its energy. That means your story has to connect. How you'll use the New York City platform, as well as your NYU community, to get to where you want to go, but also what are you going to contribute to this community back? And that is part of your application. That is the evaluation criteria. Now, let's talk about some of the materials that are very popular at NYU Stern. So the Pick Six is where Stern separate contenders from pretenders. Many applicants make the mistake of treating it like college, like a collage. Random photos, disconnected anecdotes, surface level storytelling. That typically fails. What works is a cohesive narrative that captures everything together. Each image, each caption must be a deliberate choice that connects back to your larger identity of who you are presenting yourself as. The outcome should find your Pick Six with, should feel rather, once they are done reading and looking at your 6 photographs, with a sense that I know who this person is and I see the through line and I trust the story to be true. In addition to that, I would say they would want to see you. They want to have a mental image of the ability to see you on campus as a contributor to that community. Now, the goals essay requires specificity. It's where you need to show clarity of direction, but also flexibility in execution, as I mentioned. For example, immediate post-MBA goals that are specific and attainable, combined with a long-term vision that signals ambition, but doesn't lock you into a single outcome. That's quite important because, again, that flexibility allows you to make moves as necessary. That doesn't mean, however, that you have a short-term goal that is entirely different from your long-term goal. There still has to be a cohesive story across the board. Now, also, tone is critical for NYU, for a lot of schools, but for NYU specifically, given today's topic. Stern admission team reads for authenticity. They want confidence, but not arrogance. They want very pleasant personality, but not really gimmicky kind of, here is like a bunch of cliches that I'm going to bring to the presentation. The right balance between that personality and that confidence is going to demonstrate maturity, and that's exactly what works for our clients, or what worked for our clients that we've helped support in their application to NYU and other schools as well. Perfect. So now let's move to the next. Some of the elements that applicants miss, including strong candidates themselves. First thing is they anchor goals to geography. They say, I want Stern because it's in New York. We know many of our clients, even though they attended NYU, they ended up working in different parts of the country. So you should know that you are not bound to the geography in which you are attending the business school program, typically for top 20 programs, right? If you anchor, I want Stern because it's in New York, what that signals is convenience from the admissions perspective, which, for ambitious candidates, convenience is not the way you continue to grow, right? So every applicant can say that for sure. I want to work in New York. I want to go to Stern because it's in New York. But the reality is that just because you go to Stern doesn't mean that your job opportunity is going to be available in New York. So you have to be mindful of that. Second, strong applicants misuse the Pick Six. They upload vacation photos, generic family pictures, or random snapshots. And in doing so, they are not unifying a narrative. The AdCom shouldn't have to decode your identity. That is your job to do for them, to make it easy for them to interpret, to understand who it is that you want to present yourself as. It should be obvious in the context of everything that you're putting together. And third, essays that over-index on personality. Candidates think that being quirky or casual will set them apart. But if there's no professional trajectory, no clarity of direction, it reads actually quite unserious from a business school. Even though they want the IQ, EQ component, they still expect serious candidates there. So Stern is really looking for that balance, that personality as well as that trajectory. You can have an amazing personality and still be successful. So you need to find the balance between the two. Otherwise, you may miss an opportunity to attend an amazing institution. So I'm going to share a few client stories that can help illustrate what does this mean. So I have here 3 stories that I'm going to go into. So a client who was a solopreneur working in a different industry that is typical for candidates that go into business school. And they also were in the entertainment space as side gigs, essentially. She ran her small business and pursued music on the side. Her challenge was converging the two. How to unify these seemingly unrelated paths into a cohesive MBA story. What we did is we dug deep, acting somewhat like detectives, finding the threads that tied her entrepreneurial drive, her creative expression, and her leadership story together in a way that made sense for business school. By framing her as someone who could bring both business rigor and creative perspectives to Stern, she was admitted, not just at Stern, but at other programs as well with scholarship support. Second candidate was applying to a dual degree program. So this is the MBA, MFA program that NYU Stern offers. His risk was being seen as too creative for Stern and not creative enough for the MFA program. So we balanced the narrative by highlighting his capacity to translate creative thinking into business leadership while anchoring his goals in industries where both degrees were relevant for what he wanted to do. It definitely was a delicate balance between the two, but it definitely worked because he was not only admitted to Stern, but also to the MFA program. So he was admitted to both of the programs. And this is oftentimes one of the challenges, because when applying to dual degree programs is that you have to be admitted to both programs in order to be a dual degree candidate. Right? And third, I worked with a traditional finance candidate, white male, in a crowded pool of many applicants who looked just like him. His resume looked like dozens of others. The question was, how do we differentiate this candidate? What we did is we drilled into the client's, into our client's that he served, and uncovered niche work that was both technical and creative. By framing him as someone who brought innovation to a conservative sector, we positioned him as a distinct candidate that is a strong candidate for NYU Stern. That strategy not only got him admitted, but also $170,000 in scholarship awarded as part of his admission package. These obviously aren't one-off wins. They're examples of how structured narrative strategy executed with nuance creates outcomes that gain candidates admission to Stern and other schools. So at Sia Admissions, our role is not just editing your typos or grammar. Our role is to help you uncover your experiences and engineer a candidacy that is both reflective of who you are, as well as what the business school you're targeting is looking for. First, we have to clarify the trajectory. We make sure your goals, experiences, and stories add up to a coherent, credible direction. That clarity eliminates vagueness, which is extremely important in applications where schools receive so many of them. You needing to be clear, it's really, really important. Second, we evaluate the narratives of your experiences. That means aligning your story explicitly with, in this case, Stern's IQ-EQ philosophy. We decode how your leadership style, adaptability, and self-awareness will play in a community like Stern. And third, we translate credentials into a competitive advantage. Many applicants assume that their resume speaks for itself. It really doesn't. And the adcoms, you can't presume to understand what the adcom is going to interpret, because that's a recipe for disaster, actually. You must be the one who interprets it for them. You must be the one who tells them how they need to read your story. And we help you do that, or we help candidates do that, to position themselves and their experiences so that what may look like ordinary on paper becomes compelling in context for the admission team. And this is why our clients don't just get in, they get in with funding, with multiple admits, and with quite a lot of options. And that's the difference between polishing a document, making sure that your essay has proper grammar, to helping you architect a candidacy that is reflective of who you are, but also in alignment with what the business schools are expecting of candidates that they want to say yes to. In terms of how we work with candidates, we can work together in 3 different ways. First is our comprehensive coaching, which is our flagship offer. This is full partnership from strategy to execution across every component of your application, excluding test prep. It's where we do our most transformative work and yields the highest return on investment. The second option is the MBA Strategy Circle. This is a bi-weekly live forum, place where a community is forming and getting larger by the day. If you want direct access to our insight into our community space, This is an effective way, especially if you use our YouTube videos as ways to work on your applications. Then you get to really come in and ask specific questions and how we can support your next level up of your development in your materials. This is flexible, outcome driven, and you can join month to month or on a quarterly basis. And for applicants who have specific needs, one essay, one resume review, or an interview prep, we offer hourly consulting. Those are available. We have limitations with the hourly options just because we always prioritize our full service clients. We are selective with who we work with, because we want to really work with candidates who are serious about their application and are willing to do what it takes to put their best foot forward. So if you are serious about your outcomes, these are some of the pathways that you can work with us. And if that's interesting to you, there's going to be links in the description of this live video and replay when it becomes available. So we'll open it up for questions in just a moment. But before we do, if you want to stay plugged into this level of strategy, follow us on YouTube and LinkedIn. That's where we share insight at scale. If you want regular access to live strategy conversations, essentially private setting where you feel comfortable to ask your questions that you have, knowing it's not going to go anywhere outside this community, join the MBA Strategy Circle. And if you're serious about your results, if you know you need more than templates, editing, or vague advice, book a consultation. That's the entire point of a comprehensive coaching. We are going to walk through the journey with you in this process. So now let's move into questions. There have been some questions that came in through the registration form, and some that I hope will be asked here live. We have about 7 minutes, so please type away your questions. In the meantime, we'll go with the questions that came in first. What are the components of the Stern application that carries more weight? I would say the elements of what carries weight is obviously having a competitive application first and foremost. So the numbers do matter because NYU, while you saw I mentioned their acceptance rate, they're still working in solidifying their place in the rankings in terms of MBA programs. So your profile does make a difference in the context of their ranking itself. So that's one component. Beyond that, the other pieces that carry a lot of weight is your essay and your story, especially your emotional intelligence. That's really the piece that they are looking for a lot in candidates that we've been able to help support in their application. So capturing that you are a dynamic individual that belongs at NYU is something that's going to be actually quite important in your ability to convert an application to an offer of admit. I'm a reapplicant. I have improved my GMAT from 605 to 655. What else can I improve to increase my chances? This is an excellent question. When it comes to working with reapplicants, one of the pieces that I hear often in the forums and in this, MBA circles is improve your test scores, and that's going to be enough to get you into the school the second time around. And what I see applicants make mistakes in the context of reapplications is that they just change one component of their profile and don't rework the rest of their application. That is a huge mistake that applicants make. So in the context of your question, I would say you have submitted an application last year or whenever that was. It didn't work, therefore you have to redo it. right? That is fundamental piece there. So you improve your test score, which is excellent. Now the rest is, what else have you improved in your profile since you applied last time? Did you get a promotion? Did you get more scope of work in the context of like more responsibility? Did you join extracurricular activities? How are you seeing your goals? Are your goals in alignment? So the entire application has to be redone. Letters of recommendation have to be redone. You shouldn't be using the same exact letter of recommendation as you used the previous time. So essentially, as a reapplicant, you do have actually quite more challenging process to your application, because you have extra work to do, especially if what you submitted the first time around was already strong and it wasn't successful. You need to redo your entire application to be successful this time around. And make sure that you go through that EQ-IQ balance that I mentioned in the presentation. All right, we have 4 more minutes. Ask your questions in the chat, whichever platform you're joining us. Like this video if you found it helpful. Subscribe to our channels so that you can be informed of our future content as well. Okay, so what type of applicant profile does NYU Stern usually admit into its MBA program? There's not the one profile that they typically admit. As a high-ranking institution, NYU actually prides itself in bringing and admitting a diverse pool of candidates with different experiences and different backgrounds. So it's not really the type of applicant per se that they are looking for, but what they are looking for is someone who balances that EQ and IQ. So you can do that if you are a finance professional. You can do that if you are a retail professional. You can do that if you work in government. The successful ones that we have seen are the ones who have been able to demonstrate a well-rounded candidate that is not just solely focused on their professional work or solely focused on their extracurricular work. It is someone who is really committed to growth of their own life, but also of the communities that they're a part of. And that has to be communicated throughout different parts of the application and not just one specific area. All right, last question. I have multiple strong stories. How do I choose the ones that will best show who I am through the lens NYU uses to evaluate applications or applicants? It's, at the end of the day, I'm going to say just one word. It's discernment. You have to discern which of the stories makes the most sense for you. Look for stories where you are not just succeeding for the business dollar values, but look at where you have made contributions on a macro, on a broader scale. So that is, yes, you have helped the company save money, for example, but you also have elevated your teammates along the way. You have been someone who created community, because that's really important at NYU. The reality is when you are in a city university, especially a city like New York, it's very easy for everyone to just scatter and do their own thing, because New York City has just so much to offer. So what NYU admission team is looking for is for candidates who can create community in an environment like Stern that is in the center of a very cosmopolitan environment itself. So you want to be able to communicate those. Obviously, multiple stories can mean many different things. So if you want more support, I encourage you to reach out for a consultation and see how we can support you in selecting those stories, whether those are through the hourly, the MBA strategy circle, or the comprehensive coaching itself. Excellent. We are out of time. So thank you so much for being here. Next week, we will be discussing TUC. So if you are considering TUC, definitely register for that event. Write your questions in advance. Some of you feel shy to ask. I see you live, but you don't ask questions. So write your questions in your registration. So this way we get to answer them here during the live session itself. Wonderful. Well, if you are applying to round 1, I know we are close to the finish line. I wish you good luck in your applications, and I will see you next week.